The dumbest people in America work for Donald Trump's administration. That's not an exaggeration or an insult. It's simply the truth. And even Donald Trump seems to finally be realizing it. After Kristi Noem went on Meet the Press this morning and openly admitted her own wrongdoing within the Trump administration, our panicked, childish president rushed to Truth Social to melt down and try to save himself. A complete collapse that we're going to break down. But before we get into that, please leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, hit that subscribe button because it really helps support our work. Now, before we get to Noem's meltdown and Trump's unhinged post, I want to start with someone calling both of them out. Jasmine Crockett, who just drove a dagger into Trump's immigration agenda.
He is trying to do what he's always done, which is instill fear. He wants people to go into the shadows. He wants people to hide out the way that they're doing right now. People are not sending their kids to school. They're not showing up to work. He is wanting people to be terrified, and he only wants his kind of people on the streets. He wants everyone else to kind of languish in the shadows. But we can start with the fact that he's married a couple of immigrants himself, and we can start there if we about to start denaturalizing. I'm just saying.
Congresswoman, you mentioned children not going to school as a result of the fear that's being instilled by the president. That's something that we should be talking more about, and that's children who are being caught up in all of this. ProPublica had a story out on Monday. ICE sent 600 immigrant kids to detention in federal shelters this year. It's a new record. In a majority of the cases we examined, kids ended up in shelters in ways government officials say they never would have in the past, after routine immigration court hearings or appointments, or because they were at a home or a business when immigration authorities showed up to arrest someone else. Once children are in shelters, the government is making it harder and harder for relatives or other adults who act as sponsors to get them back. The average length of stay has grown to nearly 6 months, up from 1 month during the presidency of Joe Biden, public data shows.
Yeah. This is the pro-life party. I just want to be clear. This is the party that says that, they care so much about life until life actually shows up at their front door. And this is also the party that supposedly is about Christianity. And I just imagine what they would have done to a little baby Jesus. But that's a whole other issue. It is really so heartbreaking. We know that under the prior Trump administration, it was the children in cages. So for me, expecting them to do better by children was not one of the things that was on my bingo card. I never expected them to do better. I expected them to do worse. And frankly, that is what they have done with this entire administration.
Donald Trump's entire agenda is built on cruelty. We've always known that. We saw it clearly when Russ Vought said, as part of Project 2025, that he wanted to traumatize federal workers. But it doesn't stop with federal employees. Trump wants to fundamentally reshape how we view government. Not as a tool to expand public good, feed people, ensure housing, or provide care, but as a weapon for billionaires to get richer while everyone else suffers. That's the worldview he wants you to accept. But it's simply not true. Trump and his administration are still bound by the law, no matter how much he wants to act like an unchecked dictator. And one of those laws, Kristi Noem openly admitted to breaking, which is exactly why Trump spiraled into yet another meltdown post.
Filing in federal court this week, the Justice Department said that when the administration was ordered back in March to stop sending detained migrants to a mega prison in El Salvador, you personally made the final call to continue the flights anyway. Is that correct? Do you acknowledge that?
We have court filings going on and decisions that are going forward. I'll let them continue to play through that process.
But did you make that call?
I'm proud of President Trump and his leadership and the decisions that we have made. And the decisions that are made on deportations, where flights go and when they go, are my decision at the Department of Homeland Security. And we will continue to do the right thing and ensure that dangerous criminals are removed.
So that you're saying that it was your decision. It sounds like the judge wanted.
And after that disaster interview with Noem, Tim Miller of the Bulwark responded by saying, "See you in court, Secretary." Tim is right. They're admitting to crimes openly, whether they understand that or not because they're stupid or they don't care. It doesn't matter. They're admitting to the crimes. And Donald Trump realizing this is what's happening and also realizing that the tide has turned on immigration. I saw a Republican strategist say this the other day, that this is the first time that Donald Trump's immigration positions have been a net negative for him. The first time in his political career, which is crazy to think about, but that's how bad things are for Trump, which is why he immediately took to Truth Social and said this. Trump wrote on Truth Social, "Crooked Joe Biden, Mayorkas, and so-called border czar Kamala Harris really screwed our country by letting anyone and everyone come in totally unchecked and unvetted." Of course, Donald Trump is trying to ramp up the racism, scare people, fearmonger, thinking that will save his crashing poll numbers, but it's just not the case. Because not only is Donald Trump addressing an immigration agenda that's failing, but he is trying to claim that the alleged assailant in the shooting of 2 National Guardsmen earlier this week, I should say, was the fault of Joe Biden. That it was Biden. But as Christine Noem was confronted with in this interview, was actually someone granted asylum under the Trump administration in April. So I don't really know what Trump expects to get out of this posting tirade. Christy Noem admitted, "You broke the law." Christine Noem couldn't spin the fact that you granted this alleged assailant asylum. So, what do you have to say, Donald? Not a lot, except for the fact that you're freaked out and panicked, and you should be, because the consequences are coming. And someone who is making that very clear is Senator Chris Van Hollen, who didn't just call out Trump, called out Christine as well in this interview right here.
Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen, a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Let me start right with that interview. You heard her say over and over again, effectively, that this shooting was the fault of the Biden administration, even as it was the Trump administration that granted the shooter asylum. What do you make of this?
Well, John, first, I join you in saluting the service and sacrifice of the National Guard members who were killed, and all of them. Mm-hmm. This is a desperate attempt of the Trump administration to blame everybody else in the world and not accept any accountability. As you pointed out in your interview with the secretary, it was the Trump administration that was last in time when it came to vetting. And I can tell you that they come before Capitol Hill, Secretary of Homeland Security, FBI director, and they tell us how they've improved the vetting processes. And now they're trying to blame everything on the Biden administration. This is a president who refuses to take accountability for anything.
It was also interesting that she said that he was radicalized here in the United States. So how do you vet if the radicalization happens here, it didn't happen in Afghanistan?
Well, that's a very good point. And she talked about, not talking with foreign governments. Of course, this is a person who worked with the CIA
for years.
So the reality is that we really don't know what motivated him to take this particular act. We should, of course, always review our vetting procedures, but it's not clear, based on their own vetting, that you could have picked something up in this case.
You were a big advocate, a lot of people were, both parties, for bringing the Afghan citizens who worked with the United States during the War on Terror to the United States once the Taliban took over. Do you now have concerns that this might not have been a one-off, that there have been gaps in vetting and that there could be, more problems?
Well, we should always review our vetting, but in this case, there's no evidence that there was something that escaped the vetting. As you just said, as the secretary indicated, he might have been radicalized here. If that's the case, again, the most recent in-time vetting was by the Trump administration. But John, I do think it is outrageous and unfair to try to punish an entire class of people for the evil acts of one person. That is collective punishment. These are individuals who worked side by side with America in the fight against the Taliban. And if they were sent back now, the Taliban may likely kill them.
Might execute them.
So
and Maryland is among the top 10 states in the country.
That's right. That's right.
With these Afghan citizens,
Yeah. I think this is just a desperate attempt by the Trump administration to blame others. And I will say, John, I think it's important to remember that General John Kelly told us that President Trump told him that Trump had thought that members of our military were suckers and losers. And I see the president's mindset toward our National Guard and military, suggesting that they're political pawns of his and that they owe allegiance to him and not to the Constitution of the United States.
There absolutely has to be accountability. Any Democrat who isn't demanding it is only slowing us down in stopping the rest of this administration's damage. If Donald Trump, his Republican allies, and his cabinet who have long believed they can get away with anything, finally realize that real accountability is coming, not Merrick Garland-style hesitation dressed up as fairness, then things will change fast. Prosecuting Republican crimes was never politicization, and it's time to stop pretending it was. If these people understand that investigations and punishments are inevitable, and yes, Stephen Miller, we're reopening Alligator Alcatraz for you since you loved it enough to sell merch, then the end of this corrupt era will come much sooner than 2026 or 2028. We need to make that clear now. The Republican Party is already tearing itself apart, and we should absolutely accelerate that process. Republicans in Congress are finally thinking about their own political futures instead of blindly serving Trump, so let's give them a little incentive to escalate even more. We'll be talking about that on this show every single day. If you want to support that, as always, hit that subscribe button, leave a like. And if you stayed till the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I will see you soon.